We're just over 24 hours removed from Alexander Volkanovski fighting Islam Makhachev, and although Islam now has the pound-for-pound #1 spot, you cannot tell me that he is the most skilled fighter in MMA. Because Alexander Volkanovski, regardless of losing that fight, he is the best fighter in the UFC, hands down, skill-wise, period. The best grappler in the UFC couldn't do dick to Alexander Volkanovski. He couldn't do jack shit. And I was shocked seeing this. I mean, I know that you guys were too. When Volkanovski in the second, third round was getting up to his feet, when Islam Makhachev would go in for the takedown, resulting in the majority of those rounds to be taking place on the feet. And in the fifth round, Volkanovski rocks Islam Makhachev, drops him, the most defensively sound fighter in the UFC, a guy who has barely gotten hit throughout his past 6 fights. Alexander Volkanovski has hit Islam Makhachev more times in their 5 rounds than Islam Makhachev has gotten hit in his last 6 fucking fights. This is a guy who was, based on stats, the hardest man to hit in the UFC. Volkanovski made this guy look like a zombie. Look at his face, for God's sakes. There was this photo that I saw on Instagram going around where Islam Makhachev, his face was posted after every single one of his fights. And then the 6th picture is him versus Volkanovski, and he looks like he just got out of the gulag. Like he just got out of war as a prisoner. It's like some guy that was just tortured. Volkanovski, if that fight went on any longer, if there were no time limits, would have been the last man standing. Let's be real. He's literally a freak. He's a freak, man. Especially looking at the size discrepancy. And I've been hearing some people saying, Islam didn't have a great weight cut. He didn't fill out enough. Guys, he looks like a welterweight out there against Alexander Volkanovski. And I just want to talk about the narratives going into this fight. I would say that 80% of people, maybe 85% of people, legitimately thought that Islam Makhachev was going to run through Alexander Volkanovski, including myself. And we were all saying, let's not pretend that we weren't, that if Islam were to have taken Alexander Volkanovski down, even if he were to have gotten up to his feet once, twice, he ultimately would have been fucked, not only based on the size, but based on the level of grappling that Islam Makhachev had going into that fight. For God's sakes, this is someone that's been grappling since they were, 4 years old? And they've also been doing it under Khabib Nurmagomedov's father, who just happened to produce Khabib, one of the greatest fighters the world has ever seen. And let's not act like we weren't on the verge of calling Islam Makhachev Khabib 2.0. In fact, I still to this day believe that Islam Makhachev, even if he has a black eye after the Volkanovski fight, even if he wasn't able to mount off any offense whatsoever over Volkanovski, is better than Khabib. He's more well-rounded, and we saw it in this fight with Volk. His striking looked amazing. Now, the threat of the takedown exists, and that allows wrestlers to open up their hands. But you cannot deny that stealing rounds on the feet from Alexander Volkanovski means that you are one hell of a good striker. Because listen, we didn't see no Kamaru Usman windmill punches out there. We saw straight, really good technical shots from Islam Makhachev, good knees in the clinch, and we saw moments where he was able to wobble Volkanovski around with skill. And he didn't get lit up on the feet either, because a lot of us were saying that if Volkanovski was able to stuff the takedowns, he would dominate the fight, which is not what happened. Neither of these men dominated each other. This guy is one of the most well-rounded fighters in the UFC, and regardless of whether or not he had a 20-pound weight advantage, he got humiliated on the ground. It is more impressive for a guy who's a predominant striker to completely nullify the grappling of the best grappler on the planet than it is for a guy who's already the most defensively sound fighter in the UFC, who already has really well-rounded striking, who has power in that division and a size advantage to make it very close on the feet. It's more impressive. Grappling, to me, if you are able to nullify the best grappler in the UFC, that's more impressive than a wrestler having success on the feet against a striker who's worried about getting taken down. It just is. And by the way, I just want to say this. I've never seen a performance as impressive as I saw with Volkanovski. None of us were giving him a chance. We all thought the size is too much, the strength, the grappling, everything, the skill. Volkanovski had the biggest moments on the ground and on the feet. And to just get up from Islam Makhachev, we all thought this was just fantasy talk. We thought this was just Volkanovski confident. Of course he's going to say that leading up into a fight, and he actually goes out and does it. There was no point in time in which Islam actually had offensive success in this fight when it came to the ground game, other than the last 2 minutes of the first round where we had Volkanovski in a neck crank. There is no one else in the UFC that's on this level. And if Volkanovski fights any other 55er, any other guy, he fights Dustin Poirier. I know people are saying, how do you think he does against Poirier? How do you think he does against Fiziev if he's getting rocked by Islam? Completely different fight. He does not have to fear the takedown. If Volkanovski is training for Dustin or Fiziev, a fight that's on the feet, he goes in with a completely different game plan. He goes in to training camp with a completely different mindset, sharpening up his striking. And nobody is faster than him. Nobody has the IQ of him. No one has that mentality and the gas tank. If Rafael Fiziev is getting outstruck by Bobby Green and has a razor close fight with Brad Mediocre Riddell, I don't give him that much of a shot to beat a fucking Alexander Volkanovski. And Dustin Poirier, good luck. Good luck. You're getting teed off on by Dan Hooker. We see Dustin knocking out Michael Chandler. We see him knocking out a shell of Conor McGregor, who's not in the game anymore, who's got 1 foot out of the game. Alexander Volkanovski trains for Dustin Poirier and only has to worry about the striking, and that's all, when Dustin isn't even the faster guy, doesn't have the same IQ, doesn't have the same experience, doesn't have the same grit. Dustin Poirier will be the first guy to break in that fight, and he will have a very hard time landing on Volkanovski. I'm just saying that. Volkanovski got teed off on by Islam Makhachev throughout this fight because he's worried about the takedown, and not only are you worried about the takedown, but you're up against a guy who is extremely hard to hit, well-rounded, and very powerful and technical on the feet. He is a nightmare. Put Dustin Poirier in there with Islam Makhachev. As I said, what happens in that fight? He gets submitted in the first or second round. Put Rafael Fiziev in there with Islam Makhachev. I know he's got some really good power and he's really technical. There is no way he keeps up with the pace with Islam. There's no way. He's going to be fearing the takedown the entire time. And I just don't see anyone being able to get out of those positions on the ground other than an Alexander Volkanovski, unless you're talking about Charles Oliveira, unless you're talking about Beneil Dariush. And those guys on the feet are fucked on the feet against Islam. Sure, on the ground, Oliveira can do what Volkanovski did, basically. You know what I mean? He's just as good on the ground, but he doesn't have it on the feet. The guy gets dropped with every hard shot that there is. Volkanovski beats Charles Oliveira. He lands that big punch that he landed on Islam in the first round. Charles Oliveira goes down, and he drops him throughout the entirety of the fight, because think about it. He does not have the same wrestling as an Alexander Volkanovski. I don't see him having the same success, and Alexander Volkanovski does not have to fear the takedown the same way with Charles Oliveira. He has to fear the ground game, and I actually think that Charles Oliveira is more dangerous on the ground than Islam. I really do, but I don't think he beats him based on the feet. I think Volkanovski drops him left and right. He showed that he had more power at 55. And a guy like Beneil Dariush does not have the same skill set on the feet as an Islam Makhachev. Isn't as technical, has like one really good attack, the overhand right, and that's kind of it, guys. It's a little bit wild too. Volk beats everyone at lightweight. He will beat everyone at featherweight. I just cannot bet against him, because now we're looking at Volkanovski and we're saying, oh, he got hit here and there by Islam. This was the hardest matchup he could have ever taken on in his entire life, and he literally basically won the fight, okay? We've been hearing for years from guys like Josh Thompson and other guys that train at AKA that Islam is even harder on the ground than Khabib, that he's got better submission skills, he's got better ground control, he's strong like Khabib, but he's just even more technical. We've heard this shit. And now you have all the Khabib fans coming out here and saying never compare him to Khabib again. Bro, if Khabib fought Volkanovski, what in the fuck makes you guys think that he would have had a more dominant fight? Because as I mentioned in my recap video, Khabib is nowhere near the level of striker as an Islam Makhachev. He doesn't have the reach, he doesn't have the same power, and he's not as technical. And he gets hit more often. I actually believe that if Khabib fought Volkanovski, Volk would have beat him. And this is what I'm saying. This is the hardest fight for him. This is a guy that people are saying is a striker. Fuck the size, fuck the skill. He's a striker. He's gonna get demolished. He's gonna get ran through. I was saying that if Volkanovski gets out of the third round, he'll be a winner. If Volkanovski can take this to a decision, he'll be a winner. I didn't think that Volkanovski would have arguably fucking won the fight. We thought that if it goes to the ground, he's screwed. We were all saying Islam is the best grappler in the world. And now I'm hearing a bunch of excuses. Come on, guys. Come on. And I think that Islam destroys everyone else in the lightweight division. And if Volk runs it back, knowing that he can scramble up to his feet, knowing that Islam isn't as strong as everyone was saying he was going to be, knowing that Islam cannot submit him, I think he has more success, and I think he can make the better adjustments. I really do. Even if Islam shoots more, he'll just tire himself out. It is clear to me that Volkanovski at lightweight is the more durable fighter. He has better cardio. And as we saw in the 5th round, he was the fresher guy. He could have gone 20 more or 5 minutes, bro. I'm just telling you guys. How can I look at Islam and say that's the best guy in the world when someone who's a little midget come up and just humiliated him on the ground? You're supposed to be the best grappler in the UFC. You can't even submit a 145-pound striker? Are you kidding me? Volkanovski is just too good. And I was thinking after Yair Rodriguez's fight against Josh Emmett that was going to be Volk's biggest test, but I think Volkanovski takes him down, beats the fuck out of him. We have to remember, Volkanovski, when he's talking about training for specifics in his training camps, he really means it. There is no one that gets ready for a fight like Alexander Volkanovski. He will have an answer for Yair. None of us thought he would have an answer for this. None of us. Let's be real. None of us gave him a real chance. Okay? Maybe like 10% of us. So I'm not going to speak for everyone. But even his biggest fans were saying, yeah, he's in over his head. There's no way he wins this. And I will never pick against Alexander Volkanovski ever again unless he goes up to welterweight to fight Khamzat Chimaev or Kamaru Usman. I really won't. I seriously won't. I'll never underestimate him. Because now he's fighting Yair. Yair looks good on the feet. How many times have we saw Volkanovski, oh, he's got to have a close fight. There's no way he 50-45s Max Holloway. There's no way he beats the fuck out of Islam in the 5th round and almost wins the fight. There's no way. There's no fucking way that Yair Rodriguez is going to beat this man. Volkanovski is too good on the feet. He's going to train for a striker. When Volkanovski trains for strikers, he'll be ready for the striking. He'll break down Yair to a T in the training room. And when it comes to the fight, if he gets Yair down, the grappling that he showed against Islam Makhachev, good fucking luck if you're betting on Yair. Because Volkanovski is going to destroy this guy. I think the first round will be tough, but he will tire Yair out and he will dominate him. I just wanted to get this out there. I needed to make another video on this fight because Volkanovski going into this fight was saying, keep that same energy. When you guys talk about, the outcome of this fight, keep the same energy. Everyone's saying this guy's invincible. Everyone's saying he's too strong. He's too big. He's too skilled on the ground. You've never fought a guy like this. Keep the same energy. And I was telling you guys earlier, I was saying, what does he mean, keep the same energy? Like, if you win and you prove us wrong, we'll give you the credit. We are giving him the credit. But people are starting to basically diminish Islam Makhachev, and in return, that diminishes Alexander Volkanovski. By saying that Islam got exposed, he's not as good, I still think he loses to this guy, and this guy. Bro, there was nothing about Islam Makhachev that was that different in this fight. He's still the same guy. He's still as good as we thought he was. Volkanovski's just better. And that's the craziest part. Volkanovski is just that much of a freak. By the way, are any of you guys aspiring athletes? Maybe you're competing in combat sports or you just want to stay in shape. Well, you probably already know that you shouldn't be eating processed foods. You shouldn't be going out all the time to get bullshit, seed oil ridden, soy filled foods. And that's why you should learn how to cook. But the best way to do that is with my Real Food Cookbook. This is something that I've created to offer you guys good, delicious, easy to make comfort foods with whole and unprocessed ingredients. No bullshit. Nothing that's going to kill your balls and drop your testosterone. These are amazing, delicious meals that you can make all the time and you'll never have an excuse not to eat healthy. So check out my Real Food Cookbook. These are recipes that are going to keep you in shape, that are going to keep your hormones peaked. And if you guys want a discount, use the code MMA on my website, Lucas T Fitness. The link to my cookbook is in the description. Use code MMA for a discount. Until next time.